Emily Carter was a young woman with soft eyes and a quiet smile. She worked as a waitress in a beautiful restaurant in the heart of New York City. The restaurant was one of those fancy places where rich people came to eat expensive food and show off a little. The walls were decorated with elegant paintings, and in the corner, near the big windows, stood a grand piano. It was old and shiny, a special thing that many customers noticed but few ever used. Emily had been working at this restaurant for almost 2 years. Every day she wore a simple uniform that made her look ordinary, just like many other waitresses. She knew the tables, the orders, and the customers' faces very well. She moved with care and politeness, always making sure everyone was happy. But the truth was, Emily's life was not easy. She came from a small town far away and had moved to the city to find work and support herself. She did not have a lot of money and often worked long hours. Still, she never complained. She believed that hard work would one day change her life. Emily was well liked by her co-workers because she was kind and gentle. She never joined in on gossip or drama. She kept to herself, quietly listening and helping wherever she could. Sometimes customers would ask her about her life or dreams, but she would smile and change the subject. She didn't like talking about herself much. To most people, she was just the friendly waitress who always served with a smile. What people didn't know was that Emily was much more than a waitress. Before she came to the city, she had been a music student. She had learned to play the piano beautifully since she was a little girl. Her mother was a music teacher, and Emily loved playing the piano more than anything else in the world. She had even gone to one of the best music schools, called Juilliard, where only the most talented students got to study. But then, something sad happened in her family. Her father became very sick and passed away. After that, her family had no money to pay for school or music lessons. Emily had to stop playing piano for a long time and find a job to help her family survive. Though she worked as a waitress now, Emily's heart still beat for music. Every time she saw the grand piano in the restaurant, she felt a strange pull inside her, but she never touched it. It was not her place to play there. She was afraid of what others might think. What if she wasn't good enough anymore? What if she failed in front of strangers? So she stayed quiet, hiding her talent from everyone around her. Meanwhile, there was a man who came to the restaurant almost every week. His name was Richard Halston, and he was very rich. Richard loved to show off his money and power. He wore expensive clothes, flashy watches, and always had a big smile that sometimes looked more like a smirk. He liked to be the center of attention and enjoyed making jokes at other people's expense. Most of the staff did not like him because he was rude and demanding, but they had to stay polite because he was a valuable customer. Richard often sat near the piano, drinking his fancy drinks and watching the people around him. Sometimes he teased the waitresses, telling jokes that made others laugh but left the girls feeling embarrassed. He liked to make people uncomfortable for fun. Emily tried to avoid him as much as possible because she didn't want to be part of his games. One Friday night, the restaurant was especially busy. There was a big party with some important guests. The lights were low and soft music played in the background. Everyone was dressed up and chatting loudly. Emily was moving quickly between tables, taking orders and serving food. She was tired but kept smiling because she needed the money. Richard arrived with his group of friends, all laughing and talking loudly. They sat near the piano and started drinking expensive wine. Richard was in a playful mood that night. After a few drinks, he joked with his friends, "Who here can play the piano? I'm sure none of these waitresses can." His friends laughed, and some looked at Emily. Richard turned to Emily and said loudly, "Hey, why don't you play for us? Show us what you've got." The room quieted down. Everyone looked at Emily, waiting for her answer. She felt her cheeks burn with shame and fear. She wanted to say no, but Richard was not a man who accepted refusal easily. He waved a $200 bill in front of her and said, "Come on, just a little performance. It's just for fun." Emily felt trapped. She didn't want to embarrass herself, but she needed the money. After a moment of silence, she nodded quietly and walked toward the piano. All eyes were on her. The waiters stopped working. The customers stopped talking. Even Richard's friends grew silent, curious to see what would happen. Emily sat on the piano bench, her hands trembling slightly. She looked at the black and white keys, remembering the music she used to play when she was a child. She took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. At first, she played softly, almost shyly. But as she continued, her confidence grew. The notes started to flow smoothly, filling the room with beautiful sound. The music was not just notes. It told a story of hope, loss, and strength. The people in the restaurant stopped eating and listening to their conversations. They were all drawn to the music, surprised by how good Emily was. Some of them whispered, "Who knew she could play like that?" Richard's arrogant smile disappeared. He looked at Emily with new respect and a little shock. The music moved, from classical pieces to smooth jazz, and then to a gentle blues melody. Emily's fingers danced on the keys as if the piano was a part of her. She was not just a waitress now. She was an artist sharing her soul. When Emily finished playing, the restaurant was silent for a moment, and then the room exploded with applause. People stood up and cheered, some even wiping tears from their eyes. Emily felt a warmth in her heart she had not felt in a long time. For the first time, she was not invisible. She was noticed and appreciated for who she really was. After her performance, people came up to her asking questions about her music and where she had learned to play. Emily smiled but remained humble. She didn't want to talk too much about her past. But deep inside, she felt a little spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. Her co-workers were amazed and proud of her. The restaurant owner, who had never seen her play before, asked if she would like to perform there regularly. Emily agreed, feeling shy but excited. Richard, who once mocked her, approached her with a sincere apology. He said he was wrong to treat her like a joke. From that night on, Emily's life started to turn around. The grand piano was no longer a distant dream but a part of her daily work. Customers came not only for the food but also to listen to the waitress who played like a star. And so, Emily's quiet world began to change. All because one night she found the courage to play her music in front of people who thought she was just a waitress. The evening air inside the restaurant was filled with the low hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses. The warm golden lights made the place glow softly, and the smell of delicious food mixed with the scent of fresh flowers on the tables. It was a Friday night, and the restaurant was packed with people dressed in their best clothes, ready to enjoy a night out. The music playing quietly in the background created the perfect mood for laughter and celebration. Emily Carter was on her feet again, moving between tables with her usual calm and graceful manner. She had barely caught her breath since the afternoon, but she kept going, taking orders, serving dishes, and making sure the customers were happy. Her arms moved swiftly and her smile stayed bright. But inside, she felt tired. Sometimes she wished her life could be different, less tiring and full of excitement. Still, she reminded herself that this job was important. Every dollar she earned brought her closer to a better future. The grand piano sat quietly in the corner of the restaurant's lounge, gleaming under the soft lights. Emily often glanced at it, her heart pulling toward the black and white keys. She remembered the music she had once played, the notes that made her feel alive. But tonight, the piano was just part of the decoration, untouched and silent. That was how it had always been during her shifts. Meanwhile, in a private corner near the piano, Richard Halston and his friends had arrived. Richard was known for his loud personality and his love for attention. He was a wealthy businessman who enjoyed spending money on parties, expensive drinks, and making jokes that sometimes hurt others. Tonight, he was feeling especially confident, laughing loudly as he talked with his group. His bright smile and flashy clothes made him stand out from the crowd. Richard's friends were a mix of rich young people who liked to show off their wealth. They whispered jokes and dared each other to do silly things, their laughter echoing through the restaurant. They were not shy about their money, often ordering the most expensive bottles of wine and champagne. Richard's eyes kept wandering toward Emily. He noticed her quiet presence and the way she moved around the room, polite and invisible. He thought it would be funny to make her the center of attention for once, just to see what would happen. He had watched her work for months, and now he wanted to play a little game at her expense. After a few drinks, Richard stood up and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. The group quieted down, curious to hear what he would say next. With a mischievous grin, Richard pointed to the grand piano and said loudly, "You know, I don't think any of you could play this piano better than our waitress here." He laughed and looked around the room, waiting for his friends to join in. Some of Richard's friends chuckled nervously. The waitstaff nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one wanted to get involved in Richard's games, especially when he was in this mood. Richard turned his gaze back to Emily. "Hey, Emily," he called out in a loud voice that carried across the room. "Why don't you play something for us? Come on, just for fun. I'll even pay you $200. The restaurant suddenly became very quiet. All eyes turned toward Emily. The other waitresses stopped what they were doing. Customers paused mid-conversation, and the music almost seemed to stop. Emily felt her face flush with embarrassment and nervousness. She hadn't expected this. She wanted to disappear. Inside, Emily's heart pounded loudly. She wanted to say no, but Richard's tone was not one to refuse. He was joking but also serious. The money he offered was tempting. It was a lot for one night's work. She knew that refusing him could cause trouble. After a moment of hesitation, Emily gave a small nod and slowly walked toward the piano. Her hands shook as she sat down on the bench. The polished wood felt cold beneath her fingertips. She looked out at the crowd. People whispered and watched, her with curiosity, some with doubt. They expected her to fail, to make a fool of herself. She felt a wave of fear rise inside her, but also something else, a small spark of determination. Taking a deep breath, Emily placed her fingers on the keys. At first she played soft, slow notes, feeling the sound fill the room. The music was gentle and quiet, like a whisper. Then, as her confidence grew, her fingers moved faster and stronger. She played a piece she had practiced many times in her youth. The melody was clear and beautiful, full of feeling. The customers stopped talking. The waiters paused their work. Even Richard and his friends stopped laughing. The room was silent, completely focused on the music coming from the piano. Emily's hands flew over the keys with skill and passion, telling a story without words. As she continued, Emily's playing became more confident. She changed the melody, adding her own style, moving from classical music to jazz. The music felt alive, full of emotions, joy, sadness, hope, and courage. The people listening were surprised and moved by the unexpected performance. Richard's arrogant smile faded. He watched Emily with wide eyes, no longer mocking her, but feeling respect and awe. He had never thought the quiet waitress could play so well. Some of his friends whispered to each other, amazed by what they were hearing. When Emily finished, the restaurant erupted into applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering. Some wiped tears from their eyes, touched by the beauty of the music. Emily smiled shyly, feeling both proud and overwhelmed. After the performance, many people came up to Emily to congratulate her. They asked where she had learned to play the piano and how long she had been practicing. Emily answered softly, not wanting to talk too much about her past. But deep inside, she felt a new hope growing. Her co-workers were amazed. The restaurant owner, who had never heard Emily play before, was so impressed that he invited her to perform regularly on weekends. He offered her a raise and said her talent was a gift that should be shared. Richard approached Emily later, looking serious. He apologized for teasing her and promised to be kinder. He said he had learned something important that night, that people should not be judged by how they look or what job they have. The story of Emily's piano performance quickly spread. Videos taken by customers were shared on social media, and soon many people wanted to come to the restaurant just to hear her play. Emily's quiet life began to change. The piano, once just a decoration, became her place to shine. Emily was nervous about the attention but also excited. She started practicing again every day, remembering why she loved music so much. The chance to play in front of an audience gave her confidence and joy. This night was only the beginning of a new chapter in Emily's life. The joke that Richard played had turned into a moment that changed everything. Emily's talent was no longer hidden. It was seen and celebrated. With every note she played, Emily felt herself moving closer to the dreams she thought she had lost forever. After Emily's unexpected piano performance, the atmosphere in the restaurant changed completely. What had started as a busy Friday night filled with laughter and chatter now held a different kind of energy. A quiet, awe-filled silence that hovered in the air long after her last note faded. The applause echoed for several minutes, and people were still clapping, many on their feet. The feeling was almost like a dream. No one expected such a beautiful, moving performance from the waitress they had seen serving food all evening. For Emily, the moment was both overwhelming and magical. She had played the piano many times before, but never in front of a crowd like this, and certainly not under such strange and embarrassing circumstances. She had been nervous at first, afraid of failure, but once she started, the music seemed to take over. It was like the piano was telling her story, the story she had kept locked inside her heart for years. As the crowd slowly settled, people looked around at each other, their eyes shining with surprise and respect. Many whispered, "Who knew she could play like that?" And "Where did she learn to play so well?" The question lingered in the air because Emily had never shared her story with anyone at work. She was a mystery, a quiet girl who seemed ordinary but clearly carried something extraordinary inside. Her co-workers approached her carefully, still amazed. One of the waiters, Mark, who had been working at the restaurant for 5 years, came up and said, "Emily, that was incredible. Why didn't you ever tell us you could play like that?" Emily smiled softly, not sure how to explain. She had always kept her music a secret, afraid that people wouldn't understand or that it would change how they saw her. Meanwhile, Richard Halston, the millionaire who had challenged her, sat back down at his table. His usual confident smirk was gone. Instead, he looked thoughtful, almost humbled. He had never expected the quiet waitress to have such talent, and it made him realize how wrong he had been to mock her. The joke he thought he was making had turned into a moment of truth, and it shook him deeply. Richard's friends talked quietly, among themselves. Some were impressed, others confused. They had all come to the restaurant expecting to have fun and show off, but now they had witnessed something rare and special. It was not just a performance. It was a reminder that everyone has hidden talents and stories worth hearing. The restaurant owner, Mr. Collins, who had been watching from the kitchen, stepped out to congratulate Emily. He was a kind man who cared about his staff and the reputation of his restaurant. "Emily," he said warmly, "I didn't know you had this gift. How about you play the piano here on weekends? I'll make sure you get paid well. People will love it." Emily hesitated. She was shy and unsure if she was ready to take such a step. But the encouragement from her boss and the applause from the customers gave her hope. She nodded quietly and thanked him. This was the chance she had dreamed about, but never believed she would get. As the night went on, Emily returned to her waiting tables, but now the customers looked at her differently. Some stopped to compliment her. Others asked if she would play again soon. Her co-workers smiled with pride. Even Richard came over later to apologize for making her feel uncomfortable earlier. He said, "I was wrong to treat you like a joke. You are truly talented." Emily accepted his apology with grace but kept her distance. She wanted to focus on her music and herself, not on Richard's past behavior. Still, the moment marked a change between them. He was no longer just the rude millionaire, but someone who had learned a lesson. In the days that followed, the story of Emily's piano playing spread. A few customers who had recorded her performance shared the videos on social media. Soon the clips went viral, reaching thousands of people who were amazed by the hidden talent of a humble waitress. Messages of support poured in, and many people visited the restaurant just to hear her play. Emily's life started to shift. The grand piano, once a silent piece of furniture, became the center of attention. She practiced during her free time, slowly rebuilding the confidence she had lost over the years. Her fingers grew stronger and more sure on the keys. Music was no longer just a memory. It was her future. One afternoon, a man in a sharp suit visited the restaurant. He introduced himself as Michael Thompson, a music agent who had seen Emily's video online. Michael told her that he believed in her talent and wanted to help her get back on stage professionally. He talked about auditions, recording opportunities, and scholarships, things Emily hadn't dared to imagine. At first, Emily was overwhelmed by the idea. She had spent so many years hiding from the music world, thinking it was out of reach. But Michael's kindness and belief in her gave her courage. She agreed to meet with teachers and prepare for auditions. Meanwhile, Emily's co-workers and friends supported her in every way they could. They helped her practice, encouraged her when she felt nervous, and celebrated every small step forward. The restaurant owner arranged for her to perform regularly on weekends, and the customers' cheers made her feel like a real artist. As Emily's story continued to spread, it reached her family back home. Her mother, who had once taught her to play piano, cried with joy and pride. They talked on the phone for hours, sharing memories and dreams. The music that had once been a source of pain and loss was now bringing them closer together. Richard, who had watched Emily's journey from the sidelines, decided to change his ways. He realized how important it was to respect and support others. Quietly, he started a charity to help young musicians who didn't have the money or chance to follow their dreams. He even helped Emily's family pay off some debts, though he never asked for thanks. Emily's life was not perfect, and the road ahead was still full of challenges. She had to work hard to balance her job, her music, and the new attention she was receiving. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was her voice, her story, and her future. She began to dream again, dreams of concerts, new songs, and a life filled with music and joy. The girl who once hid behind a waitress's apron was becoming a shining star, showing the world that sometimes the greatest talents come from the most unexpected places. Emily's story was a powerful reminder that everyone has a hidden gift, waiting for the right moment to shine. It was a story of courage, kindness, and the magic that happens when someone dares to believe in themselves. And so, the music continued, filling the restaurant and the hearts of everyone who heard it, turning an ordinary night into an unforgettable moment of wonder. After Emily's piano talent became known, her life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The small restaurant where she worked started to attract more customers, many of whom came specifically to hear her play the piano. Emily found herself at the center of attention, something she was not used to. For years, she had lived quietly, keeping her talent hidden, worried that showing it would only bring trouble or disappointment. But now she was being encouraged by strangers and friends alike to follow her dream. Emily's first weekend piano performance was both exciting and nerve-wracking. The restaurant was packed, and the usual sounds of cutlery and conversation quieted down as soon as she sat at the piano bench. She felt the familiar cold touch of the piano keys beneath her fingers and took a deep breath. This time, she wasn't just playing for herself. She was playing for the hopeful eyes of the audience who had come to believe in her. Her music flowed smoothly, her fingers dancing across the keys with a confidence she hadn't felt in years. The customers smiled, some even closing their eyes to listen more deeply. The applause that followed was warm and full of admiration. Emily felt tears of happiness welling up. She had taken the first step toward a new life. Over the next few weeks, Emily's schedule became busier and busier. She still worked as a waitress during the week, but every Friday and Saturday night she performed at the restaurant. Her boss was proud of her and made sure she was paid fairly. Other musicians in the city began to hear about Emily, and some invited her to play with them at small events and parties. Emily's world was opening up. She practiced every day, determined to improve. She remembered the lessons her mother had given her when she was a child, the hours she had spent learning to read music and play scales. Now, all of that hard work was paying off. She began to learn new styles, from classical to jazz to modern pop, blending them into her own unique sound. One day, Michael Thompson, the music agent who had contacted her earlier, came back with exciting news. He had arranged for Emily to audition for a music scholarship at a prestigious music school in the city. This was a chance to study with some of the best teachers and get professional training. Emily was nervous but excited. She knew this could change her life forever. Her friends and co-workers at the restaurant threw her a small party to celebrate. They gave her gifts like music sheets, a new piano bench, and even a small portable keyboard to practice on the go. Emily was overwhelmed with gratitude. She never thought she would have so much support. On the day of the audition, Emily woke up early. She felt butterflies in her stomach but reminded herself to breathe and stay calm. She put on her best clothes and carried her music sheets carefully. When she arrived at the music school, she was amazed by the grand building, the shiny instruments, and the talented students all around her. It was a world she had dreamed of but never believed she could enter. Emily waited her turn nervously. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage and sat at the grand piano. The room was filled with judges, experienced musicians and teachers who would decide if she deserved the scholarship. Emily took a deep breath and began to play. Her fingers moved gracefully, telling a story through music. She played a classical piece, then a jazz improvisation, showing her range and passion. The judges listened carefully, nodding and smiling at her skill. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, then polite applause. Emily felt a wave of relief and hope. A few days later, she received the news. She had been accepted and awarded a full scholarship. She was going to study music full-time with all expenses paid. It was a dream come true. She called her mother, who cried tears of joy on the other end of the phone. Emily's life was changing faster than she ever imagined. At the same time, Emily faced new challenges. Studying music seriously was hard work. She had to learn new techniques, music theory, and history. The other students were talented and experienced. Sometimes Emily felt like she didn't belong. She missed the simple life she had known, the friends at the restaurant, and the quiet moments she had to herself. But every time she felt doubt, she remembered why she started. She thought of her mother's encouragement, the nights she spent practicing, and the moment she first sat at the piano in the restaurant. She pushed herself harder, determined to succeed. As Emily's skills grew, so did her confidence. She began to compose her own music, inspired by her life story, the struggles, the hopes, the love for music. Her compositions were emotional and honest, touching the hearts of everyone who heard them. Her performances at school became popular. Students and teachers would come to hear her play. Emily's music was different. It spoke of real life, of someone who had fought to follow her dreams despite difficulties. Her classmates respected her not just for her talent, but for her courage and determination. Emily also began to think about her future. She dreamed of recording an album, touring the country, and sharing her music with the world. She wanted to help others who, like her, had hidden talents but no way to show them. She started volunteering to teach piano to children from poor neighborhoods, using music to bring joy and hope. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, things had changed too. The owner, Mr. Collins, was proud to have a star in his place. He put up pictures of Emily's performances and played her music on the restaurant's speakers. The restaurant became famous not only for its food, but for the beautiful music that filled the air. Richard Halston, the millionaire who had once teased Emily, had become a quiet supporter. He admired her dedication and had even started funding music programs for underprivileged youth in the city. He and Emily never became close friends, but they shared a mutual respect born from that unforgettable night. Despite all the new opportunities, Emily never forgot her roots. She continued to work at the restaurant when she could, helping her coworkers and staying connected to the people who had supported her from the start. She knew that success was not just about talent, but about kindness, hard work, and staying true to oneself. One evening, after a long day at music school, Emily returned to the restaurant to find a surprise waiting for her. The owner had arranged a special event, a concert featuring Emily and some local musicians she had met at school. The place was decorated with lights and flowers, and the air buzzed with excitement. Emily felt nervous but ready. As she played, the music seemed to carry her away from all worries. The audience was enchanted, and the night became a celebration of dreams coming true. After the concert, people came up to her with smiles and thanks, some even asking for lessons. Emily realized that this was just the beginning of her journey. The road ahead was long and full of challenges, but she was no longer afraid. Music was her voice, her strength, and her gift to the world. Her story inspired many people, waiters, musicians, dreamers, showing that no matter where you start in life, you can rise and shine if you believe in yourself and work hard. And so, Emily continued to play, to learn, and to share her music, turning every note into a step toward a brighter future. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge to her dreams, a symbol of hope, and a source of endless joy. Emily's journey, which had started so unexpectedly in that small restaurant, was now reaching new heights. After the concert and the scholarship, she had begun to realize that her dream was no longer just a dream. It was becoming her reality. But with every new step forward, there were challenges she hadn't expected, moments of doubt, and decisions that would shape her future. As Emily continued her studies at the music school, she became more and more dedicated. The lessons were tough, sometimes frustrating, but she never gave up. She learned about music theory, history, composition, and performance. She practiced for hours every day, her fingers growing stronger and more precise. The piano became her closest friend, and her way to express feelings she couldn't put into words. Her teachers noticed her talent and passion. They encouraged her to enter competitions and participate in recitals. Emily was nervous at first. Standing in front of an audience was still scary, even though she had grown more confident since her first restaurant performance. But she reminded herself why she was there: to share her music, to tell her story. The competitions were fierce, with many talented musicians from all over the country. Emily played her pieces with emotion, letting the music speak for her. Sometimes she won awards, and sometimes she didn't. Each experience taught her something new about music, about herself, and about life. Through these experiences, Emily also made new friends who shared her passion. They practiced together, shared advice, and supported each other. The music school was a community, a place where dreams were nurtured and talents blossomed. Emily felt she finally belonged somewhere. While she worked hard at school, Emily never forgot the people who had helped her along the way. She continued to perform at the restaurant on weekends whenever she could. The customers loved hearing her music, and many had become regulars just to see her play. Her co-workers cheered her on and told her stories of how proud they were. Emily also began teaching piano to children in her neighborhood. She wanted to give back and help others find the joy of music. The children loved her gentle way of teaching, and her stories about music and life. Teaching reminded Emily of her own journey and how important it was to have someone believe in you. As her reputation grew, Emily received invitations to play at bigger venues and events. She traveled to nearby cities for performances, sometimes alone and sometimes with friends from music school. These trips were exciting but also tiring. Emily missed home sometimes, but she knew she was building a future. One special moment came when Emily was asked to perform at a charity gala for underprivileged children. The event was organized by Richard Halston, the millionaire who had once challenged her to play piano as a joke. Richard had changed a lot since that night. He had become a supporter of young talent and wanted to help create opportunities for kids like Emily once was. Emily's performance at the gala was one of her best. The room was filled with important guests, many of whom had helped fund scholarships and music programs. When Emily finished playing, the applause was thunderous. She felt proud, not just for herself but for all the children whose lives could be changed through music. After the gala, Richard approached Emily again. This time their conversation was friendly and respectful. Richard told her how much he admired her courage and talent. He said he wanted to continue supporting her career and help her reach even bigger audiences. Emily accepted his offer but made it clear she wanted to stay true to herself and her music. Life was full of new opportunities, but Emily also faced difficult moments. The music world was competitive and sometimes harsh. She had to deal with critics, rejection, and the pressure to perform perfectly. There were nights when she doubted if she was good enough or if she belonged in this world. But music, always, brought her back to herself, reminding her why she loved to play. One of the biggest challenges came when Emily was offered a chance to record her first album. This was a dream come true, but it also meant making tough choices. The record company wanted her to play popular songs that would sell well, but Emily wanted to include her own compositions, pieces that told her story and reflected her heart. Emily had long conversations with her producers and managers. She explained that she wanted her music to be real and honest, not just something made for profit. Some people didn't understand, but Emily stood firm. She knew that true success was about staying authentic. The recording process was long and demanding. Emily spent hours in the studio working with sound engineers, practicing until every note was perfect. Sometimes she felt exhausted, but she remembered the little girl who had dreamed of this moment and kept going. When the album was finally released, it received warm reviews. Critics praised Emily's unique style and emotional depth. Fans wrote letters telling her how much her music had touched their lives. The album helped her reach a wider audience and opened doors to new possibilities. With success came more travel and performances. Emily toured several cities, playing in concert halls, theaters, and festivals. Each performance was special, a chance to connect with people through music. She loved seeing the smiles on the faces of her listeners and hearing stories of how her music inspired them. But no matter how far she traveled or how famous she became, Emily always remembered where she came from. She stayed humble and kind, treating everyone with respect. She visited the restaurant regularly, playing the piano there when she could, and spending time with old friends. One day, Emily received a letter from a young girl named Sophie who lived in a small town. Sophie wrote about how she loved music but had no way to learn or play. Emily was moved by the letter and decided to help. She started a foundation to provide music lessons, instruments, and scholarships to children in need. The foundation grew quickly, helping many children discover their talents and dreams. Emily's work outside of music became just as important as her performances. She believed that music could change lives, just as it had changed hers. As the years passed, Emily's life was full of music, love, and purpose. She met people from all walks of life, formed deep friendships, and inspired many. Her journey from a shy waitress to a celebrated pianist was a story of hope, courage, and the power of following your dreams. She also reconnected with her family, especially her mother. They grew closer, sharing music and memories. Emily often played the piano for her mother, thanking her for teaching her the joy of music and believing in her even when times were hard. Looking back, Emily understood that every step, every struggle, every success had shaped her into who she was. The piano had been her voice, her healer, and her path. And though she had come far, she knew her journey was far from over. Emily's story became a beacon of hope for many people around the world. It showed that talent can be hidden in the most unexpected places, and that with passion, hard work, and kindness, anyone can achieve greatness. She never forgot the night that started it all. The night when a millionaire joked and challenged her to play the piano, unknowingly changing her life forever. That moment of courage had opened a door, and Emily had stepped through it with grace and determination. Her music continues to inspire and uplift people everywhere. A beautiful reminder that sometimes the smallest moments can lead to the biggest dreams.